Federal prosecutors have launched a criminal investigation into Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. Government officials say the probe is related to Powell's testimony last summer about the central bank's building renovation project. Powell responding in a video statement saying it's part of President Trump's continuing campaign to pressure the Fed to lower interest rates. Our Federal Reserve correspondent Jennifer Schonberger is joining me now with the latest. And just an extraordinary turn of events, Jen, especially at a time when it seemed like tensions between the administration and the Fed chair had abated to some degree. And of course, Powell, right, he's a lawyer. He's a very plain-spoken and sort of soft-spoken guy. But it's pretty clear from this video that this is a strong statement.
Very strong reaction from the Fed chair last night, Julie. That's right. Just to recap what you said, Fed Chair Jay Powell facing a criminal investigation into his testimony before the U.S. Senate this past June when he made comments about renovations of the Federal Reserve's headquarters here in Washington. In an extraordinary video message, Chair Powell revealed Sunday night that the Justice Department served the central bank Friday with grand jury subpoenas threatening criminal indictment related to Powell's testimony before the Senate. Powell suggesting this action isn't so much about his testimony as it is about a difference of opinion in interest rates, which threatens central bank independence. He stressed what he called, quote, unprecedented action that should be seen in the broader context of the administration's threats to the central bank. Take a listen to Chair Powell.
The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation.
Now, President Trump has denied any knowledge of this investigation, telling NBC News in an interview Sunday night that, quote, I don't know anything about it, but he's certainly not very good at the Fed, and he's not very good at building buildings. When asked whether this was pretense to try to pressure Powell to lower rates, Trump said, no, I wouldn't even think of doing it that way. What should pressure him is the fact that interest rates are already too high. Powell said in his video message that over the course of 4 different administrations spanning both Republicans and Democrats, he has always moved to set interest rates solely on the congressionally mandated goals of maximum employment and price stability and will continue to do so. Julie?
And Jen, it's interesting because if Trump is trying to get Powell to lower interest rates, it seems like that this could backfire in various different ways. We know that Powell is done in his term as Fed chair at the end of May. He might stay on, though, still as a member of the Federal Reserve. So there are questions about whether this would sort of sway him to stay on. You also have Senator Thom Tillis, who is a Republican from North Carolina, who is going to be leaving office, that he is not going to approve any of President Trump's appointees to the Fed while this is all going on. So there's a lot of questions now about what ripple effect this is going to have.
Absolutely. And you're seeing that today in the markets with bond yields. You know, if it is that Trump wants lower interest rates, then you do need lower yields on treasuries. And if there is a question about central bank independence, that indeed is going to backfire. At this point, you know, Chair Powell has really held restraint in responding to the president, trying to keep tensions cool. The fact that he came out with this video message, of course, coming after unprecedented action from the administration, almost feels like both sides are in an all-out war. The question now is whether Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who has sort of been the adult in the room, moves to sort of cool tensions, or whether Republicans in Congress create some sort of an off-ramp here. You mentioned Senator Thom Tillis. He is one who has said, hey, I'm not going to support whoever the next Fed chair is, because frankly, this action from the administration is a warning shot to whoever the next Fed chair is going to be. And all of the different candidates, from a National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett to former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh, who are supposedly the top two picks, have said they will indeed move and support central bank independence. But this is sort of a shot across the bow, which is, if you don't do as I say, I will move to bring criminal charges to push you out so that I get what I want. And so this is a very interesting, shaky moment here for the central bank, for our country, for financial markets. And we're going to have to see how this plays out and if we see cooler heads prevail.
You know, it's interesting. We've been watching the poly market odds on both the next Fed chair and some of the other questions around it. There is not a broad expectation that Trump is going to be successful in pushing out Powell. Although, to your point, it doesn't matter if there is this threat hanging over the head of the next Fed chair. And in terms of the odds on the next Fed chair, Jen, it still remains Hassett. But, you know, at this point, they keep teasing, the White House keeps teasing that we're going to get this at some point. We're going to get the actual news. Any new indications on that front?
Not at this point, but I will say it's interesting to see whether Fed Chair Jay Powell will indeed not just step down as chair in May, but whether he steps down as governor, because his term is not up until 2028. So the question is, does he feel that he needs to stay on board in order to protect central bank independence? And are there other members of the FOMC who are going to coalesce around Chair Powell right now? And whenever the new Fed chair comes in, creating some pushback there. We already know there are a number of hawks on the committee right now who do not support lowering rates further. So this is going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Jason Furman much more about this in the next hour. Jennifer, thank you very much. Appreciate it.